So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about race relations in America in a way that it came up in an NPR discussion with my favorite hostess on the network so far, Michelle Martin. I really love Farad Jadeh, who hosted News and Notes, but that program is no longer with us. So Michelle Martin is talking to two political analysts about how the storm might affect the campaign. And conservative Janice Krause, a senior fellow with the Concerned Women of America, commented on the show on, this is from Monday, so the storm had not hit yet. And so she was asked the question about recent statistics that show that race relations, however this is sort of quantified, have become worse in the years since Obama has been president. And this woman's response was quite interesting, because she said, Ms. Krause said that she found that Obama had been quite divisive. I think he's been the most racially divisive president in my memory, in fact, she says. And she's been astounded at the times when the president has adopted Ebonics, for instance, when he was deliberately chosen to use racially inflammatory language. And so she was pressed to say, well, what do you mean by using Ebonics and racially inflammatory language? And so she goes on to say that when Joe Biden, for instance, when he was at Virginia, and she explains that she's also a Southerner, I'm also a Southerner, and I know that you may not recognize that I'm a Southerner from the way that I'm talking right now, but when I'm around other people from the South, my tongue starts to get looser too. So she understands this, and she says that specifically, it's different, this is a quote now, it's different when a black person adopts that speaking to a predominantly black audience when he doesn't normally. So she said that it's okay that Joe Biden doesn't normally speak in a Southern drawl, the way that on my videos you'll notice I don't normally speak in a Southern drawl, but it's different when a black man does it. And I would even go so far as to say, when I participated in a channel on YouTube that was a group of black people talking about black issues, there were probably times when I more so did adopt Ebonics, and I knew that I was specifically speaking to that group, even though they weren't specifically from America. Many of them were from here in the UK. But knowing that I'm speaking to an audience that reflects me, just like speaking in Southern English, does bring out a different sort of communication. And this is called code switching. And someone in the comments, and also me, brought this up. But I'm astonished. I wanted to really talk about this because I think it's really important, though like the other commentator on the show, I find it ridiculous what she's saying. I do want to say that I acknowledge that she feels really alienated by that language in a way that she's not able to link between Joe Biden doing it and Obama doing it. And I would suggest that the link for her is not just that one is black and one is white, but because when the black person speaks in a sort of a different code of language, sort of amongst ourselves, as people might say, she feels excluded. Now she doesn't make the link between the way that African Americans might feel excluded when Joe Biden, chums up with Southern buddies, because that chumming up with Southern buddies has a very sordid history for us. Not that we question Joe Biden in that way, but I'm just saying that if Joe Biden were just some random white man, getting all Southern, we would know what that means. And in fact, lo and behold, we see that in our politics. And so, Southern white brotherhood has not been a source of pride or for anyone really, because even those that existed were not based on brotherhood per se, but were based on the hate for the other. And I'm just disappointed to see that such an influential woman, this woman is a part of the conservative women's agenda in America, and she's a leader and a spokeswoman, and yet she has no, in a sense, that kind of self-awareness that is necessary for us to transform racial relations. When she says, um, it seems to me to be very affecting, like he's affecting this sort of language, whereas, with Joe Biden, it's more genuine that and as she says, well, we're just Southerners, and we're around our people, we talk like our people. But she doesn't give Obama the benefit of the doubt. Well, maybe sister, when he was at Harvard and he was behind closed doors with other black people studying or whatever, maybe they did also speak like this. Maybe they just didn't speak like that in front of you. And that's the deeper question is, and this is the heart of what the respondent said, is from my perspective, what Obama's presidency has done, I've said this in other videos, is a lot more black people to come out. Because I think that we, in a sense, not wanting to scare people in the majority culture, have really hidden ourselves. We have spoken, adopted standard English to the point of erasing in their minds the idea that we even spoke a different way. And you see this all the time because, someone who speaks like me, people always, racist, implicit kind of racist people kind of chime up to me and say, those people, and you don't speak like them. Now, I've been fortunate to not have been surrounded by a lot of people like that in my life, but even when I hear about it, it makes me cringe because I think, okay, so my cousins don't speak like me. Some of my cousins don't speak the standard English that I speak. Some of my grandparents certainly, who grew up picking cotton, certainly didn't. So what would you say to them? So, I'm okay, but, my actual flesh and blood is not okay. And let alone the fact that, wouldn't you assume that if you assume that we're cotton pickers and that, our grandparents weren't as formally educated as some of us, wouldn't we know how to communicate with our grandparents? So even if you don't hear me speaking in so-called Ebonics, then maybe I just don't speak it to you, but I might speak it to other people. I mean, this is the kind of self-awareness that I'm seeing that is totally lacking in this, and it's very disturbing because I think that this might be the kind of mindset of a lot of people who feel that they're very open-minded, but in fact, this woman hasn't even considered that there's any other perspective, and that's really what empathy is about, isn't it? Is considering that there is an other perspective, and from her perspective, she's just acting like, oh, someone's speaking a language that excludes me, and I feel excluded. Now, I'm not saying that maybe they're speaking a language that makes them feel as included as you feel when you're with other Southern people. And I would go on to say that it is because of our implicit racial biases that we're not able to see each other as people and make these sorts of links. Just make these kinds of links in our own minds that we would naturally link. She says it. That might have been the case, but that's very different when a white man does that speaking Southern. I'm from the South, and I tend to speak more Southern when I'm there because I pick it up. It's part of my DNA, and it does come out then. And I think that's true. And she's saying it is very different when a black person does that. And the obvious thing is, well, why would it be different? No, of course it wouldn't be different. But she's not able to see that black person and those black people as actual people that would have feelings like her. And that's what I'm saying, that racism is it's not cerebral. We can't think our way out of it. We have to really look at how we respond to difference. And it becomes a part of our personalities, how we respond to just something that is different from us, something that is even opposed to us. Just even hearing no determines so much about our personalities that you really have to wonder, was this just one instance in this very privileged woman's life where she was just told no? And then there she was, just like many people, back in that crib, crawling around on the floor when her parents told her for the first time no. And that felt so disprivileging to her that she was just put off. And she can't imagine that he's so divisive. Well, y'all would ask her, prior to Obama, how inclusive was she as a head conservative woman of any black people? She's saying that he's divisive now because she feels somewhat put off. But how inclusive were her practices before this conservative agenda? And well, as we know, not really. So there you go. I mean, this is just, it disturbs me that this kind of mentality is out there, and I wanted to entertain it because I think that those of us who do work in and amongst majority white people, we have to find ever more ways to create dialogue, and we cannot always depend on people who are invested in majority culture thinking to raise these issues. And we can't always depend on going back home and speaking to our brothers and sisters and people who identify with us, and that just being enough, because that may have gotten us over. But I think now we're talking about building bridges, because it's that heart-to-heart communication that really that will matter. Because there is no discrimination on the law books and all that stuff, and yet we know that even gender discrimination is the name of the day, forwarded by the conservative agenda, and yet you have this woman who, will contribute to Mitt Romney wanting to police women's bodies, police black people's bodies, police poor people's bodies. And this is what you get when we're so divided internally, we become duplicitous. And this is the woman who's duplicitous, this Miss Krause.